You're watching the Urban Debate on Mirror Now. I'm Faye D'Souza. Thank you for joining us. We're focusing on the acquittal of the Talwars. And there are several news channels who will be having conversations about this acquittal, but we have just one very specific question to ask. This case has obviously been messed up. We could spend hours talking about the evidence or the lack of evidence, the investigation, how the investigators disagreed with each other, how there was a flip-flop that went back and forth. But the consensus is that it was botched up. The question that we have to ask, which is so important today, is why and by whom? How much of this was the responsibility of the police, and how much of it was the responsibility of the media? There are several people today who will turn around and say the media circus that was created around the Aarushi murder case put pressure on the police, on the CBI, and perhaps the courts to get us to where we are today. And where we are today is when a couple who lost their daughter spent 9 years in hell. Most of those 9 years spent going in and out of jails, and 4 definitely in prison. Who's responsible? Was it the media circus, or was it botched up and corrupt investigation? That's the question we're asking this evening. A very, very simple question, and I believe that it is time for some of us, at least in the media, to step back, introspect, and ask if we are doing our jobs responsibly. Because it's not just about TRPs and numbers. We have a role to play in society, and when our job is done irresponsibly, lives are impacted. Our phone lines are open, so is Involve.in open right now, because I want to understand what you think. Do you believe the media is doing a responsible job? Do you trust the police? As an average citizen, this is an important question for us to ask and answer today. Joining me on the show, Javed Ansari, senior journalist; Sharat Pradhan, also very senior journalist; Sarthak Nayak is a lawyer with the Supreme Court of India; Kailash Vasudev is senior advocate also with the Supreme Court; Swaranjit Sen, former Director General of Police, Andhra Pradesh. We'll also have Vartikaranda as a media critic who will join us in a little while. Trisha Shetty, lawyer, co-founder of She Says, which is an NGO, and Vinay Tiwari, very senior journalist and consulting editor right now at the Times Network. I welcome all of you to this conversation. There's a lot of details and a lot of examination of details that's happening right now, but I want to stay with the question that we're asking. Whose fault was it? Mr. Ansari, I'll start with you. Was it the media? Was it the police? Who failed Aarushi?
Look, because I am from the media, let me address that question first. The media did not exactly cover itself in glory. Sections of the media went overboard, raced with each other to pronounce judgment. And it was just not one side. Not just people who pronounced the Talwars guilty, but even there was the other side, which was competing, which was giving them the benefit of doubt, which was giving them a clean chit. So yes, there are multiple people who are to be blamed. One is the system, the police, the investigating agencies primarily, and also the media. The media, like I said, did not cover itself in glory. I perhaps belong to a more conventional, old-fashioned school of journalism, where we believe that where we were taught, this was drilled into us, that our job is not to pass judgment. Our job is to place facts before our readers, before our viewers, and let them decide. We were asked not to editorialize, but to place facts. Unfortunately, in the new brand of journalism that is taking place, facts are a casualty. Editorialism, opinion comes to the fore. So therefore, as a journalist, if I'm true to my creed, I will have to accept that yes, a section of the media did go overboard. We ought to have been exercised greater restraint. We ought to have been, a lot more circumspect. But the police, the investigating agencies, and the system at large must take the blame as well.
I appreciate your honesty and your candid answer. I'm going to go to Swaranjit Sen, former DGP, Andhra Pradesh. Mr. Sen, thank you for joining us. Who failed Aarushi, Mr. Sen? Was it the police in this case, or was it the media?
Well, the person from the media has been very candid and forthright, and I agree totally with him. But while saying so, I will place the blame on the police. This is a murder case. The very first thing that you look for in a murder case is the motive. The police have not been able to fix any solid motive on anyone. And the way they have flip-flopped, one, the state agency has another one story, and the CBI, the renowned CBI, I will again say the renowned CBI with an R capital, has a different story. Now the point is, do you know what's happened? I'd like to ask the police agencies, on what basis have you jumped to conclusions on one side and the other side? And have you really investigated all the facts? I don't see that anything great has been done by the police, especially in such a sensational case. Now that leads me to ask, what was the motive of the police to not have investigated this case properly? You know, the question mark is very, very big. And that's what I would like to say in this case at present. Maybe further, if, as the debate goes, yes, I'll add many more things. But right now, I would place the blame on the police first, and perhaps the media next. And then the courts, you know what they are like. They do succumb to media pressure, and in many cases, the judges have said so, even in courts. And that is what the situation that we are landed with right now.
I'm going to bring in Kailash Vasudev at this point, Senior Advocate with the Supreme Court. Mr. Vasudev, is it true that the courts succumb to media pressure? And do you believe that the media has blood on its hands today?
Yes, I do. You see, it is not that media trials don't take place in our country. They have been noticed, God knows for how many years, since 2004. Justice Santosh Hegde very clearly said trial by media. Subsequent thereto, there have been a lot of reports where the media's reports have had an influence on trials and proceedings all over the place, whether in court and nowadays, of course, in the political ranks of parliament. So the media has a role to play and does play a role, even in investigative journalism, which is a good part of media. But on the other side, when you carry your situations a bit too far, it becomes a bit difficult. There's an old saying, freedom of press is entitled to, a press is entitled to the freedoms available to it, but the moment it makes a disclosure, it loses its freedoms. Today the media has done that. It has lost its freedoms, and it should be now channelized, corrected, rectified, so that damage is not done to society and to individuals in the way it has been done in this case.
Trisha Shetty seems to disagree. Trisha Shetty is a lawyer who has spent a lot of time working with victims of crime against women. Trisha, in this case, and the reason why I insisted that we have you as part of this, this particular conversation is the manner in which the police dealt with this case, because the victim was a girl, because the victim was female. Trisha.
Right, so you know, whilst I agree that the media should have shown restraint, let's not absolve the police and the... If I could complete, sir, whilst I agree that the media should have shown restraint, let's not confuse the facts in case here. The fact is that the police is the one, that the Noida police is the one that allowed media personnel and other personnel to come and trample the scene of crime where crucial evidence was lost. The fact is that the CBI did not, you know, there was a whole thing about the pillow covers that were mistaken. The fact is that the CBI did not confiscate the dental equipment that they allege was used to carry on the murder. The fact is that the CBI head has gone on record today, the then CBI head, A.B. Singh, has gone on record today to say that there were loopholes within their investigation, and the fact is also that the CBI wanted to close the investigation as an unsolved mystery. What's really perturbing to me is it seems that the CBI themselves were not convinced that the parents were the perpetrators in this case, but yet they wanted to push for the death penalty. They were not just happy with life imprisonment. Despite of not being convinced that the parents were the culprits in this case, they wanted to push for death penalty. So it shows to you how little value they place upon life, little value they place upon justice being served here, and also the fact that they called it honor killing, the fact that they alleged this young girl was having physical relations with the house help, and hence the parents took matters into their own hands. That is a severe allegation to make. If it is not true, that is severe character assassination upon a young 14-year-old girl's character. So in this case, it is not the media that sentenced the parents to 9 years of cruel imprisonment. It is the CBI that did. So let's not play cat and mouse game here. Clearly, it is the police and the CBI who is to be blamed for the travesty of injustice that we have seen. Till date, we don't know who's killed these two people because of the lapses in the investigation conducted by the CBI and the police. We cannot and in no way blame the media here for this.
Vinay?
Well, Faye, in my book, there were two different kind of killings that happened in this case. One was, of course, the physical killing of two people, Aarushi and Hemraj, for which the police and the CBI have blood on their hands because they did not provide justice in this case. But there was another killing of the character in which both the police and the media have their hands in the till. Remember, and which is why, if I have to do a graded hierarchy of culpability, I would obviously put the police and the prosecution at a higher level. They probably were responsible 75% of what went wrong. But surely the media was responsible 25% in the kind of allegations and the calumny that preceded what the police did.
So,
I think
do you believe the problem here were the journalists or the foot soldiers who stomped all over the crime scene, who were talking to constables and picking up information that they then presented as facts? Or do you believe it is the editors sitting in the offices who then decided that they would pass verdict before the case had been investigated?
Well, both. But I think in the case of journalists or anybody stomping all over the crime scene, that is one area where I've always believed. That's like saying that I'm going to stand next to a man-eating tiger and expect the tiger to not eat me. This is up to the prosecuting agent. The police in every part of the world has the ability and the knowledge and the technique to seal off a crime scene. That media will always rush into where the event is happening. That's something that should be expected by a modern police force. You have to seal off a crime. Police has equipment, it has technology, it has the ability, and it has the legal backing to draw a line and say you cannot cross this line. And I as a journalist cannot cross that line if they draw that line. The same narrative happened even, Faye, in the 2611 case where the media was accused of standing too close to Taj. Fact is that it took 12 hours for the Mumbai police to actually put up a rope and say you can't cross it. Once you put up that rope, I am not allowed to cross that rope legally. That is something that is completely absent in this case. So I don't blame the media for rushing into an event. They will always do that. That's their job. It's for the police to know where to stop and draw the line, what to say and what not to say, so that the calumny or the characterization does not precede the investigation.
Right. Sharad Pradhan, where do you stand on this? Do you believe that the police at this point are at fault? The police are the ones that let down Aarushi.
Well, as far as the media is concerned, let me first mention that I fully agree with what Javed Ansari says, and because a section of the media jumped the gun, and there again, what needs to be understood is that media initially was briefed by the police, by the UP police, who botched up the whole case. I remember the concerned police officer telling me at that point of time how this whole narrative, the whole scene he narrated as if he was an eyewitness. So, you as a media person, you are bound to get to accept that, to believe what a senior officer is telling you. And, you do, but at the same time, media should have questioned that. What happened was that media was taken for a ride, and media by the police, and police was consistently goofing up. You remember, the blatant goof up by the police was the fact that Hemraj's body was lying on the terrace of the Talwars for 24 hours after the police had entered the scene. Can you imagine? I don't remember reporting any crime event without going to every nook and corner of the place. Well, like Vinay pointed out, that the media should be stopped. There should be a line. Police should draw a line, which they usually don't, because police often, when they are outgoing and they want to be projected in the media, they certainly give the media more leeway than they legally or they deserve. So with the result, the police I would hold certainly more responsible for this, because cops, they pass the verdict on day one. They pass the verdict. So media is bound to believe what the police tells them. Subsequently, I think this is where what CBI needed to do was to go beyond what the UP police had done. The way they carried it out, I think it was a very shoddy investigation, And subsequently, as about the judiciary, less said the better. You know, the way things take place, the way they keep blaming the media for media trials, fine. Even if the media is doing this kind of trial, which is not done, as they say, why should the judiciary get influenced? A judiciary is expected to act objectively. The cops, I can understand, they get influenced by the media because they make their brownie points onto, they have to please somebody, all kinds of, because there is no fair investigation, unfortunately, and especially in the UP police, where cops are indulging in all kinds of corruption. Their first interest is in making money. In a case like this, where they know that they are not going to get underhand money, they are bound to be not taking interest, as has been visible very clearly in this whole investigation.
Right. Let me bring in Sarthak Naik. One voice on the panel who hasn't spoken yet.
Who erred.
Yes. Sarthak Naik, where do you stand? Do you believe
there should be action against the cops? The cops.
Before answering that question,
have
one second.
Investigations.
Before answering that question, I'd like to tell you one thing. This is not an end of the road for the CBI. CBI can always obtain a certificate if there is a question of law under 134A and can file an SLP before the Honorable Supreme Court of India. Just because today they are acquitted, that doesn't necessarily mean that tomorrow Supreme Court will not take cognizance of the matter. And that is also not testimony of the fact that tomorrow they may not be convicted again. So just because High Court has given them clean sheet, that doesn't mean that somebody had failed them. But answering your question, accepting without admitting, I think apart from media, the primary responsibility is of the Noida police as well as the CBI. Investigation is the prerogative of the police officers. The quality of the evidence depends on the quality of the investigation. If you see the manner in which they went to the crime scene, the manner in which they collected the forensic things, the way they went after 24 hours for Hemraj's body, they were grossly negligent towards the discharge of their duties. But having said that, let me tell you, in a criminal case, they were acquitted due to the lack of evidence because of the lackadaisical and lopsided investigation, not by the media. And by telling that judges are influenced by media journalists sitting in newsrooms, I think it would be a disrespect for judiciary. CBI judges, High Court judges, Supreme Court judges, they appreciate evidence on record which is available in the charge sheet, in the court records, and the facts which is available on record.
With all due respect, we have Kailash Vasudev, who's a senior advocate with the Supreme Court, who disagrees with you, who tells us that judges are being influenced, and several other members of the panel actually agree with what he says. Mr. Vasudev, do you agree?
I don't agree with him. And if he believes that, he can give an hypothetical example how they are being influenced, or give an example in past where judges have been influenced and passed order influenced by the media. He can elaborate on that.
Technically asking him to incriminate himself. Mr. Vasudev, go ahead.
You see, when trials take place...
The judiciary has coined this term of media trial.
Yes, when trials take place, the term media trial has been coined by the judiciary alone. They accept the fact that there are trials by media, and the judges exercise a lot of caution in not accepting what the media has to say. On the other side, you are right in saying that the judges will definitely go strict senso by evidence on record and facts available to them in deciding a matter. But there is no record which says that the judge is not influenced by what the media says. In the old days, prior to the 1975-78 era, many judges didn't even read the newspaper because they felt they would get influenced. Today, television has come to stay, internet has come to stay, public opinions matters. Please understand, when you do a public interest litigation, there is so many decisions which the courts take based on what the media has to say. Media may or may not have factual information, but public interest litigations begin on the basis of media reports and statements. That is the beginning of media trials.
But this is not a case of
in
public
other cases,
litigation.
you may or may not have an influence, direct influence, but the beginning of the case is often a report in the media.
This is a cold-blooded murder.
And it is here... No, just one second. I'm coming to the cold-blooded murder. Please. I'm coming to the cold-blooded murder. In this case, the whole offense, the whole situation starts in 2008 and goes into trial. The first 2 years of this case are what the media has to dictate. The CBI takes a different position. There's a flip-flop in the police. If there's a flip-flop in the police and the CBI, which is the investigating agency, turns around and says that, look, we want to close the case and files a closure report, what makes the judge open it up? It is opened up at the behest of the accused persons. It is open to the
Judge.
judge to say that a CBI is an investigating agency under 156 or 173, says there is no case, close it.
No, there is a
What
provision in the
stopped them?
CRPC
Do you
under
realize the
191B.
consequence of what has happened
They can
today?
always reject the closure report and deny the protest petition. It is a mandate of the
But they
CRPC.
gave a closure- the CBI gave a closure
The CBI gave a closure report, but
No,
the court, while
under the
exercising its
mandate of the
power
CRPC,
under 191B, can always
173.
take cognizance of the matter, because just because clean sheet was given to the Talwars, that doesn't necessarily
that
mean
is
that
true,
nobody is
but you
killed.
take
All right,
cognizance.
gentlemen.
So in order to find out who was killed, court had to take cognizance under 191B. Therefore, the court rejected the closure
Let's
report.
not
sir.
get into the trivial. Let's
All
not
right,
get
all right. Let's not get into the
Let's not get
specifics.
into the trivials
I
of
want to
the
bring
law
one
right
question
now.
back to Mr. Swaranjit Sen, and as we have a team of young reporters as well, and when the reporter comes back and tells us something, we always ask, who did you hear it from? Did you hear it from the police? Yes or no? If yes, was it said on camera? If yes, then we take that as official word. And when a police officer comes out and holds a press conference, as Mr. Gurucharan Singh of the IG of Meera did a couple of days after this...
Gurdarshan Singh.
Yes, Gurdarshan Singh held that press conference. The media will go with what
The
he
IG
said.
of
And the
police,
things he
Gurdarshan Singh.
said in that press conference, Mr. Swaranjit Sen, where he used words like characterless,
Yeah.
were completely unacceptable.
Absolutely, you're right. And I don't agree with any police officer jumping the gun and making statements before the investigation is over. I don't know how this gentleman did it. And I was listening to some other debate, and there's another senior police officer who is saying that the police is not culpable. There should be a departmental inquiry. What nonsense. I can see clear and simple criminal conspiracy in this case. This is a sensational, sad and sordid case, and I think the police hierarchy should have been more involved in trying to come to the correct conclusion. I am really shocked that CBI made such a big blunder as being flip-flop, and then now it says that they will go to court. Yes, there are provisions to go to court. Any advocate, any lawyer can quote all that, but that is good enough for argument. Why should that stage have come? The CBI should have looked into all the evidence, and only then should they have carried through this case or decided to drop it completely. You don't have to, police does not have to get directions from the court to investigate cases.
Court.
It's their duty to do it. And I may also add that narco analysis tests in this case were not conclusive. Well, is there something more that the police could have tried? I would say yes. And they have not taken any cognizance of the latest investigation systems that are available in the world. There's something called brain fingerprinting or brain mapping. That could have been gone in for. And why did they not do it?
Go in for regular
is the police
fingerprinting.
not knowing of such methods?
Mr. Swaranjit Sen, the fingerprints,
the police has been,
on the glasses and the bottles
Yes.
were actually not were not looked at and were not filed. So I think we might be expecting a bit much to expect brain fingerprinting.
On
Go
the
ahead, Mr.
doorknob, on the doorknob, fingerprints on the doorknob.
Well, if you put it that way, then I've got to agree with you. But yeah,
Right,
if
Sharad
you're
Pradhan?
going to say all that, well, brain fingerprinting, I guess they won't understand what it's all about.
Sharad Pradhan, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
To
whole case
keep
clearly
quoting,
shows how
this thing,
how-
sections of law, I think
Sorry.
it is pointless in this case.
No, this is not pointless. Let me tell you.
Right, Sharad Pradhan, go ahead.
Well, my point again is that why somebody like Gurdarshan Singh was allowed to get away with murder, literally. If the parents of the girl suffered these 9 years, if they are not guilty, today the court has held them not guilty, then whatever, whether because of benefit of doubt or whatever, the point is who compensates them? It's these cops who have led the courts to eventually put these people in the dock for no reason. There is, and interestingly, that boy Krishna, who the police let off and allowed him to go away to Nepal, nothing further was done on him. No further investigation was done on him. And you should have seen him, the way he turned out, the kind of utterances he made, and the way he sounded at the end of the show when before going off to his native country, there was every reason to suspect. But the UP police did nothing. At every stage, UP police goofed up, the Noida police goofed up, because they were all in a hurry to work out the case, to make some brownie points. The point here is, again I reiterate, that there needs to be action. The court should have taken cognizance, suo motu cognizance of the goof up by the police, and deterrent action should have been taken against the police, so that in future such acts of gross negligence, apathy, and they need to be checked. There needed to be an action against them.
But you know, while that might be a noble thing to say, Mr. Pradhan, and I want to take this question to Javed Ansari. This is like saying we should hold journalists accountable. If we say we're going to hold the police accountable, there were several members of the police, from the CBI to the state police, in the entire extent of this investigation. Some of them are retired, one of them has passed away. Who are we going to hold accountable now? Is that even a practical suggestion?
Look, if somebody's passed away, then there's very little you can do.
Allowed to be taken for a ride.
No, that is not an answer.
Sorry,
that is not an answer.
By the time CBI took up the investigation, it was too late.
You can prosecute those people who exist.
Mr. Ansari, Mr. Ansari.
Yeah, the point I was making is that if somebody's passed away, he's passed away. But those who exist, they have to be held accountable. After all,
existing, you should prosecute.
Yes, Mr. Ansari, go ahead.
After all, who is going to compensate the Talwars for the years that they've lost? Not only did they lose a daughter, their only child, you besmirched their reputation. Of course, as a journalist, I do believe that we ought to have been a lot more circumspect with the kind of stories we carried and the kind of judgment we pronounced. But the primary responsibility rests with the police, with the Noida police, and with the investigating agencies. And they have to be held accountable. I've served for a year abroad, and I know, and you read so much about it as well, that every time somebody is acquitted, and not just for technical reasons, he or she has the right to seek compensation. Yeah, because you want to save yourself the harassment. You don't want to take on the police because they have various means of arm twisting you. You want to take the easier option. But the fact of the matter is that somebody has to be held accountable somewhere. Because otherwise people will get away with impunity.
And to add to what Javed is saying, the concept of accountability, Faye, is not just about identifying the officer and prosecuting him in a court of law. Accountability even means that the said officer who presided over such a terrible investigation is not made to do similar activities in the future. The fact of the matter is that Mr. Gurudarshan Singh, who was then the IG of a range, continues to be range heads and holds sensitive posts and presides over several other cases like this. That's another way of holding accountable. You can shunt that person out to an administrative post and not give him a range, not give him a place which is meant for law and order duty. But that concept doesn't exist in this country. You do not have officers being posted on the basis of their track record of how they actually investigate case. The postings and the cases in the sensitive are not determined on that basis at all.
On what basis are they determined though, Vinay?
Well, look, Faye, the fact of the matter is, in this country, we've had 4 police reforms commissions. You've had a Malimat committee report, you have a Ribeiro committee report, you have a Soli Swarabji committee report, and you have a Padmanabhaiya committee report. You also have a police reforms order by the Supreme Court in the Prakash Singh verdict, each of which has actually specified what you need to do to make the police more efficient, more accountable, and more in tune with how the times should change. The fact of the matter is, not one of those reports have even been read, forget about being implemented.
And that's the unfortunate truth.
Absolutely.
Yes. Mr. Vasudev, if it's about holding people accountable within the police at least, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
See, there are two facets. There are two facets to this, and this is a matter which has been engaging attention of all of us over time. If you look at the gamut of cases which have come into the situations, and especially those handed over to the CBI or to the crack units of the Delhi police or the police units all over the country, you will find that the total conviction is less than 70%. Now, within the conviction of less than 70%, you start wondering why the other 30% cases were filed. Now, this is of the cases filed. Forget those which have been, where FIRs alone have come in. I'll give you an example. There was a case of a shootout in Connaught Place a couple of years ago when 2 young men were shot dead, and the police came out with huge stories that they were terrorists in a Maruti team. Eventually, it was found that there were 2 innocent businessmen who had come, and the policemen had set up the whole thing to get rid of them. And eventually, the officers who were responsible were sentenced under 302. I'm giving an example as to the flip side of it. Now, let's come back to the situation as it emanates today. We have no protection for either the victim or for the accused who have been acquitted because of a miscarriage of justice, as the expression goes. Bad investigation leads to miscarriage of justice. There is no system which the police follow for the purposes, we are not aware of it, where the police follow to take errant officers to task for bad investigation. One of your panelists mentioned that they should be sent off the range and taken off the position and not given any further investigative work or any law and order situation. He should be made to do a desk job. Why even give him that? Why shouldn't he be sacked? If he's an incompetent police officer, unable to look after law and order or investigation, he should not be in the service at all.
Yes.
Second part, when a person is now discharged of the offence for which he has been charged, he is now an innocent person. On the basis of available information and available bad investigation, the person is acquitted. There are 2 situations. 1, bad investigation. 2, benefit of doubt. 3, clean acquittals. Bad investigations are a bane to the system because most of the acquittals take place because of bad investigation. There are judgments of the Supreme Court where in mass murders people have been let off. The recent case of Bihar. So therefore, we have got to work out a system of getting the police to function as police officers, not to function to their whims and fancies and cater to the press.
Yes.
Number 2.
Yes,
when a person is
Mr. Vasudev, I'm going to come back.
I just want to conclude and I want to say one more thing.
Yes, okay, all right, go ahead.
I just want to go on for one step further.
Yes.
You see, now what the second thing is, when a person is acquitted, now take for example the case of the Talwars. They'll carry the case to the Supreme Court, we'll see what happens. But now, they have from 2008 to 2017, 9 years, they lost their daughter, they've lost their professions, both are dentists. They were working someplace, they were earning their bread and butter, it's all gone. Social stigmas have come with 50% of the society saying, no, these gentlemen are responsible for murdering the daughter. The others saying, no, this is a wrong charge. But that apart, technically they have been acquitted of the offences for which they have been punished. They've been punished and ostracized in society. In England, under the Criminal Justice Act, there are clauses which say that a person who has been acquitted can invoke the jurisdiction of the Secretary of State and seek compensation. The Secretary of State discusses the matter with the judicial systems and they give compensation where it is due and deserving. It's a very fair investigation. It saves the problem of the man going back to court, asking for damages and the like. It's a system which works and works very well. This year they've cut the grants by £5 million because the amounts of money which they were doling out were a bit high, so they've decided to cut it down. But that apart, we must have a system here. A, catch the police officer, sack the man if he's incompetent, and prosecute him for playing havoc into somebody's life. B, the state must now wake up to the fact that if 30% of the cases are resulting in acquittals, those people must be compensated for the wrong done to them. You cannot ostracize a human being in society. It is against the principles of law.
Right. I want to bring in Vartika Nanda, who joins us right now. She's a media critic. Vartika, thank you for joining us. Good evening.
Let me just point out one small thing. Can I just...
1 second. Let me just bring her in to make an opening statement, and then I'll come back to you, Mr. Pradhan. Vartika Nanda, my question to you, and the question we're asking on the panel this evening is, who failed Aarushi? Was it the police? Was it the media? And if it was both, to what extent should either of these agencies or either of these groups of people take responsibility?
I would not like to talk as a journalist here. Today I am talking as a prison reformer. This is what I have been working as for the last couple of years. I used to meet Talwars quite often as a prison reformer, and I think it will be better for me to reserve my comments as far as the role of media or the role of judiciary is concerned. I would certainly like to talk about my interactions with them, because that is what I think most of the people are interested to know, but other things I would like to rest in.
Go ahead. Vartika, go ahead. Tell us about your interactions with the Talwars.
Okay, so Tinka Tinka is my project under which I visit different prisons. Dasna was one of them. So when I met them for the first time almost 3 years ago, I told them that I am working on this project and this is going to be a book which would be based on reporting inside the jails. And during my interaction with several other inmates, I used to meet them quite often, and I asked them one day that, can I write a chapter on you? And they didn't say anything about it. I started working on it and I took almost 1.5 years to complete that book. Interestingly, when the book was done in Hindi, I asked both of them together one day that I would like you to translate this book into English. Both of them were mum. They were quiet. And after some time, Dr. Nupur Talwar said, we can translate the book, but we would request you not to use our name. I asked them why. I asked both of them why. Both of them said that, the society will not accept this. And I said, this is what I want to do. Because as a reformer, I feel even if somebody is inside the prison, he or she has the right to write, think, and has also the right to
Absolutely, absolutely. Right, that's a very good point. I'm going to go back to Mr. Sharad Pradhan. Mr. Pradhan, you were making a point in reaction to Kailash Vaste.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just trying to point out, in a state like Uttar Pradesh, the corrupt and the inefficient invariably manage to get key jobs, the prize jobs, irrespective of which the political master is there. That is the tragedy here, and I can cite a number of examples which, of course, right now it's not the occasion, but there are a number of cases where the most corrupt people even voted. For instance, some IS officers voted as the most corrupt by the IS association. They became chief secretaries of the state. That is how things work here. Same is with the police, unfortunately.
And let's also remember one thing, Mr. Swarajit said, the CBI, which is considered some sort of, elite in an almost infallible portion of the police, is actually just picked out of state police. And there were members in the CBI team in this investigation who were part or formerly part of the UP police.
Yeah, you're right to an extent, because CBI has a direct recruiting system also. So they do recruit directly, but certainly the senior cadres in CBI, they all come from the state police, and the leadership comes from the IPS lot.
On deputation.
Now I would like to go back to the investigation stage. Somebody was saying, yeah, on deputation. You're right, yeah, on deputation. I would like to say that, I was hearing some other debate, and the officer was saying that, police officer was saying that it is lack of training. What rubbish. I mean, in a murder case, the police knows what to do, and certainly the first thing they have to do is to cordon off the area and preserve the area. Sometimes the area is preserved very, very long, till a definite line of investigation is taken. This was not done in this case. That is one thing. The second thing is, why do we have a hierarchy in police? It is to ensure that such cases are dealt with correctly, and the leadership at every level sifts the case, discusses it, and then leads the investigation. Now that has also not been done, and I'm really surprised that it would have definitely gone right up to the top leadership. And what was that top leadership doing? So again, I would like to mention that I feel a lot of it has to do with the police leadership. And when people are talking about corruption and all, well, what can anyone say? Do you recruit police officers? Does the UPSC recruit IPS officers who have a very high sense of integrity? Nothing is done. Just because people score high marks, they get into the services. Most of the people who come into the police, for large number, are those who are disappointed because they have not made it into IS or IFS. Is this the way to manage the country and the administration of the country, and especially the police department?
Absolutely. Let me bring in a few people on the phone line. Amit is on the phone line from Nagpur. Amit, go ahead.
I think.
Yes, ma'am. मैं नागपुर से बोल रहा हूँ.
You're absolutely right.
Dead of the night रात को अपने बाजू के रूम में अगर कोई आवाज हो रहा है और आप आराम से सो रहे हो, 2 लोगों का मर्डर हो रहा है, ये बात कहीं हजम नहीं होती। आप मेरे घर से 7 किलोमीटर आगे रेलवे स्टेशन है। 1 बजे के बाद सवेरे 4 बजे तक के मेरे को ट्रेन के हूट सुनाई देते, दिन भर नहीं सुनाई देता है। बाजू में गोल्फ का क्लब यूज हो रहा है, 2 लोग स्ट्रगल कर रहे, चिल्ला रहे, आवाज नहीं आ रहा, बाजू में कोई लोग सो रहा है।
अच्छा, so your point is how can someone sleep through the struggle? David Joseph on the phone line from Mumbai. David, go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, Faye, I come back again on your debate.
Yes.
I would say that there ought to be a code of conduct with regard to media reporting of sensational cases, be it murder or any terrorist cases. A reasonable restriction should be imposed on the media reporting investigation and trials which are ongoing. The court should hold trials of such sensational cases, and a reasonable restraint order ought to be issued on the media from reporting details of any sensational cases.
But, you know, David, it's an interesting thought, but I don't know how possible that is. Vinay, do you think that's even possible?
No, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. I know that we are all agitated and we would want some very draconian things to do, but I'm afraid that's almost assuming that there are in-camera trials in this country. You have OSA cases that are held without media being present. And are we saying that all in-camera trials are absolutely the fairest of fair investigations and trials? That's not the case. Opacity in a situation doesn't necessarily guarantee you justice. The point is something different. I think the gentleman is not aware. There are already powers existing with agencies which can restrict media's entry or access to information. That is always used. There are inadequate powers currently, and the police have used those powers in cases. There have been cases, criminal cases, involving important people, where the quality of briefing, the frequency of briefing, and the amount of information to be shared has been restricted by the police. The media cannot force the police to give them information.
Let me quickly tell you
the unprofessionalism of the police which leads to this problem.
So you're saying the problem is not the fact that the media has reported anything, the problem is the leak, which is
not just the leak, it is about the way the police appears at a crime scene, the way they secure it, and then the way they transfer information to the organization which is covering it. I mean, there is a way and a method of doing that. Rajiv Gandhi assassination happened as well. There was a massive investigation and SIT was taking part in it. There were no allegations of a crime scene not being preserved, because obviously in that case, it was a very high profile case and everybody did. There are so many other cases in this country where the agencies have actually done a great job of it. So there are enough powers already. Media does not have unrestricted rights to cover or ask for information. So I don't think there is a case to have any more opacity in a trial or in an investigation than perhaps that is already possible under law.
Right. Let me just bring in Vartika, Nanda, one more time. Vartika, in your interactions with
how do they question?
Right. Mr. Pradhan, go ahead.
The question of preventing the media doesn't arise in a case where the police doesn't care to even scan the entire scene of the crime. They did not care to go to the staircase, to the terrace where the body of Hemraj's body was lying. So what do you talk of cops restricting the media?
As far as the functioning
they're not doing their own job.
As far as the functioning of the CBI is concerned, you were discussing, CBI's functioning depends whether it is acting independently or it is being monitored by court. The cases like 2G, Coal Block, where Supreme Court is monitoring CBI, CBI is absolutely efficient. But when CBI is being monitored by self-monitoring, then they can go to any extent. So it's not that CBI is incompetent. A few days back in Odisha, CBI went to a sitting High Court judge to interrogate him, mistaking him to be Justice Kudusi, who is accused and has been arrested. But the same CBI has filed more than 80% of the charge sheet in coal scam. So it depends on who is monitoring the CBI,
from UP.
who is behind CBI, and whether CBI is being monitored by court or not.
Are you telling me, Sarthak Naik, that the most sophisticated investigating agency in our country needs adult supervision at all points, and if it is not being supervised by the court, it's not going to be able to do its job?
Most of the times, and it depends on their interest. Most of the times. If it is big cases like 2G, Coal Block, Supreme Court can come in.
UP.
Mr. Souza, there is a very recent development. Your CBI chief, Ranjit Sinha, is under investigation.
So
therefore, you cannot possibly turn out. Till you don't have a centralized cadre called an independent investigating agency, like they have the FBI or the Scotland Yard or the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which is a specialized area, and as long as you have deputations coming in without a central cadre, you will find aberrations in the CBI working, because then you have interests. If you don't have an interest, but you have a professional body to look into the matter, it's a totally different situation.
Yes, and a very important point he just mentioned, and I'll tell you why.
Yes.
In this case, the first CBI officer who led the investigation was a UP cadre IPS officer. The second police officer who led the investigation in this case was also IPS from the UP cadre.
So the interest here, you're saying, would have been friends back in the UP
If
police?
you ask me personally, this is a fit case for the DOPT, which is the controlling cadre for the CBI, to find out what was the trigger to transfer the case from one agency, for one investigating team to another case. This is something that we don't know why it was shifted from one to the other, and that is something the DOPT must actually inquire into.
Right. Vartika, very quick question to you. In your conversations with the Talwars, did they believe that the media, that it was the media, or was it the police they believed that that put them through the worst?
I would say that I never asked them straight questions like this. Whatever they told me and whatever I thought is deemed fit to be part of the book, I used it. But herein I would like to certainly say that this is not the biggest national issue. This is not the biggest crime mystery. And this is not the only high-profile case in this country. There are many other cases and there are many other problems. There are problems of pendency in courts, there are problems of judicial accountability, there are problems related to prison reforms. I think when we discuss one particular issue, we generally ignore other issues. And I personally feel that after living for so many years inside the jail, when an inmate or inmates or anybody who is coming out of the jail, we should introspect as a society how we are going to accept them back to the society. I think this time, at this moment, we should be discussing more on that instead of playing a football match. This is what I feel.
Right, fair enough. That's a fair point as well. I'm going to go back to Javed Ansari. Javed Ansari, speaking about the CBI, and I want you to react to the things that our other colleagues on the panel have said. The fact that the CBI at the end of the day will have interests to play to unless it's being supervised by the courts, and it's not possible to have the CBI constantly supervised by the courts on every investigation, is it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the other way of putting it around is that if the CBI is left free to do its job, and if it doesn't have to answer to its political masters, in a perfect world, it shouldn't. But we know that all governments have used it like a caged parrot, and it's especially in these cases where it blunders. But if it is left to do its job, even without court monitoring, if it's left to do its job, perhaps it will do a much better job than we give them credit for. But yes, if there is interference, if they are being asked to take a particular view, then you will end up with the kind of things that we see every day.
Well, Trisha Shetty, and you deal with victims of crime, with families of victims of crime, with police on a daily basis. We have a question that's come in from someone called Leonard on our at Involve, who has asked us, is investigation and justice in India simply to do with money and power? That if you're powerful, if you're famous in some cases, and if you have money, the system simply works in your favor. And the Talwar's problem here was that they were neither powerful nor famous nor very rich.
What I can safely attest to is that if you come from power, if you come from influence, and if you come from money, clearly you can get away with murder, you can get away with rape, you can get away with sexual assault. We have seen cases where the case of the physiotherapist, where she was found raped and strangulated and set on fire in her own house. I know that the bereaved parents were asked questions like, well, we found cigarette butts in her room. Did she smoke? As that has any correlation to then her being sexually abused and set on fire. We know how long it took for the police to rightfully find the accused in that case. Even in this case, the investigative agencies besmirched the character of a 14-year-old girl. They alleged that a 14-year-old girl was in physical relationships with the 45-year-old house help. You know, when you're casting such major aspersions on a young girl's character, and again, I go back to the fact that the CBI felt it is okay to push for death penalty in this case of parents that have now been acquitted. So we now realize that clearly we live in a democracy where justice is only reserved for where justice is served based on your financial status, on the people you know, and the amount of money that you're willing to put forth here. We see there seems to be no justice being served in this case. And for anyone, I mean, of course, we should, make sure that the media does its job right and does not is not hasty in casting aspersions on anyone's character. But to blame anyone else but the investigative agency with completely botching up this case, and 9 years later, none of us still having any sort of clarity with who is to be blamed. How do we ensure that this young girl gets justice, that this house help gets justice? The fault is purely on the investigative agency and the police here. And perhaps you're right, if they were more influential and powerful, maybe this would not have happened.
Mr. Vasudev, is it about money and power and clout?
Please repeat your question.
Is justice in our country largely to do with how much money and power and clout, any individual has?
See, yes, we'll give you some examples. Recently, there have been a spate of cases where high-profile people have been involved in motor car accidents, killing people over the road. Who's taken the rap? The driver. There have been cases of very massive thefts, including computer thefts in the financial industry. Who's taken the rap? It's the small person in the clock. The main people have got away. See, so therefore the system in itself is engineered to protect those who can afford to protect themselves. We have unfortunately not gotten to a system where we have an independent investigating agency which will look into things on a fair view. You will look into evidence as is made available and not evidence as it is. There's a massive distinction. I can represent you provided there is an offense which is alleged against you. But I cannot possibly do anything if evidence is created against you for the purposes of prosecuting you. That's where the difference is. Today the systems have become very perverted, and we must, here I have a very powerful caveat, not that the policeman will like me for it. You are all wanting to stay in positions at any cost. And in the police system, there is no hierarchical system in which people who are actually doing offences or committing crimes or not carrying out their duties, save and excepting for sending them to the police lines. They stay in the police lines for a couple of months, come back to where they are. There are stories galore that in every city where there are plum postings to be obtained, you pay huge sums of money to become an SHO. These are not unheard of stories. You want to get a promotion, you've got to manipulate it. Now what happens is, to do all this, a big pardon?
Mr. Pradhan says police stations and positions are auctioned. Yes.
Are auctioned in my state.
Yes, so therefore, till such time as you don't stop this...
It's an open game.
I beg your pardon, I'm sorry, but whatever it is, but it is there. So therefore, till you don't have a complete... If you don't have a complete shake-up of the police system to bring about a departmental system, to bring about investigations, law and order, detectives, you think you've got to forensically put in different departments. Every policeman is not supposed to look after law and order, and every policeman is not to be a detective. These are different areas. We have got to shake up this system to bring about some semblance of sense, rather than bring about statements and bring about prosecutions without evidence leading to acquittals. Either you have enough evidence to carry the conviction through, or don't prosecute. You are wasting political time. I use the word political time. You're wasting public time. You're wasting court time. You're wasting the money of the national exchequer. You are a waste to the system. Don't do it.
Mr. Sen, I know Mr. Sen wants to respond. 1 second.
There are responsibilities. You're absolutely right. You're I think he is absolutely right. Some time ago, pardon?
Go ahead.
Some time ago, we had a very nice expression. It was called, people were saying you have to have a police to police the police. All that is very well. But where will you get the correct character of people to police the police? Again, I come to the same point. The way of selecting of persons for not only the appointments into the police, but even for the jobs, is so very haphazard. Somebody who's got political clout, he will manage to get a plum posting whether he's fit for that or not. And once he gets that, he thinks he can do whatever he likes. That's how you have cases like this, where the police is so careless, intentionally I would say, not to investigate, not to cordon, and they've botched up the case from the very beginning. What has happened to these people? I would like to know what action has been taken against these police officers who have been so very deviant and devious in their conduct. What were the police leadership doing all this time? I have not heard much about it at all. If somebody else has, well, then I don't know about it.
Right, we have a couple of people on the phone line. Borigowda is on the phone line from Bangalore. Go ahead, sir.
Madam.
Mr. Gowda?
Hello.
Yes,
Madam.
yes.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
I support the panelists who are abusing the police. I support them because the police is wrong investigation without brain. They will not investigate properly. They file a charge sheet with the court. On that their charge sheet court will go the case. One example I gave you in Karnataka, in Tumkur district, the doctor's wife was killed.
Yes.
The doctor was arrested. Police arrested the doctor, her husband. And after three years, in Bangalore, some 3 persons arrested for stolen theft case. Then they revealed that they killed the doctor's wife. Doctor was in jail for 3 years. Doctor was he lost his profession. He lost his everything. He lost.
Yes.
Who will be responsible for all these police negligence, madam?
Yes. Who's going to be responsible for this? Dr. Sanjay on the phone line from Jalna. Dr. Sanjay, go ahead.
Hi, Faye. I feel that we, as Indian civil society, have failed Aarushi. One small child has lost her life. One other person lost life. The parents suffered because of that. The judiciary failed. The police failed. The CBI failed. And even the media failed. We only keep on blaming this one, the media, the judiciary, the politicians, everything. But as Indian citizens, as a society, can't we put in systems the next Aarushi will not happen?
How do we make sure the next Aarushi will not happen? That's fair enough. And we have to keep reminding ourselves that there is no justice so far. We don't know who killed Aarushi and Hemraj, and the likelihood, 9 years later, of reopening an investigation and actually finding new clues, experts are telling us, it seems very difficult. Sharad Pradhan, go ahead.
Well, I just want to illustrate my point about the shoddy working of the UP police. Very recently, barely a month and a half back, there was some white powder found in the precincts of the State Assembly. And the Chief Minister went to town describing it as a PETN, which is a very, very lethal explosive. And it was, even the Chief Minister went to the extent of making an announcement, there was some terrorist hand behind it. Can you imagine? It was sent to a state forensic lab, which also confirmed, I don't know how they gave its report. Eventually, when it was sent to the central agencies, they found it to be the most innocuous, some powder, whether it was salt or some powder which was used in the paint. Can you imagine the state government going to town, declaring it as a terrorist act, and then now what do you expect from the senior officers? If the Chief Minister makes such a statement, everybody toes the line. And the matter was silenced because both the state and the centre happen to be both under the same political party. Otherwise, this is just to tell you how the UP police works. And this happened not very long ago. Irrespective of who's sitting in power, this is how the UP police works.
Absolutely. And we have...
Here there's a very...
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Vasudev. We lost that connection, but Vin, I want you to answer this question. I'm going to ask you a slightly tough question. We have talked about the fact that there is corruption within the police, the vested interest, perhaps pressure from higher ups on various investigations. We also, in the same note, have to talk about corruption within the media. It's not just about TRPs. There are other reasons why the media does what it does.
Oh, of course. And I think media has as many incompetent people and as many perhaps even corrupt people as any other profession. It's not something media can never put its hand up and claim preserve of a different percentile of corruption. Of course there are corrupt people, of course there are incompetent people, and often you have corruption and incompetency all in the same person. And that's as scary as anything else. And I would be the last person who will ever say that it doesn't happen in the media. Of course you have it, and it happens from top to bottom. There is no question about that. But I think the Raja point here is that the cocktail of corruption or incompetence of people who report the incident and the incompetence and corruption of people who are actually investigating the crime has played havoc in certain cases, and I think Aarushi is one such example. To add to Sharat's point about the powder being on assembly, do you know that in Uttar Pradesh and a lot of other states too, the police stations are actually given epithets. There are police stations that are categorized as Nazarana Thanas, Shukrana Thanas and Zabrana Thanas. These are Urdu words which actually, Nazarana means stations where people will give you money without asking for it. Shukrana means they will give you money if you do something for them in return. And Zabrana are of course police stations where you have to force people to give them money. And that is the way in which the auctions happen. So the highest rate of the auction is for those which are Nazarana Thanas. This is an institutionalized concept in North and in UP, and Sharat will bear me out on that.
You know, Mr. Swaranjit Sen, you were former DGP Andhra Pradesh.
Absolute.
Is it this bad all over the country? Are our police this corrupt?
No. I think the South is far better than most other places, and the system that has just been described, it is not, I can't say that I've come across it in the South, at least not in the two states. Now there are two states, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. Yes, there may be cases where there are so-called lucrative police stations and people are posted to them. And that's mainly because of political influence. In this case, in such cases, I would still say that it is the police hierarchy which should resist, and they should have the guts to do it. And if they don't have the guts to do it, I don't think they are fit to be called police leaders. But do we ever select leaders for police? That's my question again. It comes down to the same question again and again.
How are the postings done? We've run out of time on this conversation, and in conclusion, I just want to wrap up saying just one thing. I want to thank all of our panelists for giving us time and for being so honest with your answers. Obviously, there are massive problems here with the media and the police, and it was a combination of those problems, that deadly cocktail of the inefficiency and corruption of both media and police, that botched up this entire case. And all of our panelists unanimously agreed that the police reforms of how police officers are selected, how are they posted, how are they punished if something goes wrong, and the accountability for a botched up investigation is the need of the hour. Because at the end of the day, as regular citizens, we have to know, we have to trust, we have to have faith that the police will bat in our corner and on our side. If something were to happen, that they would fight for the right and not draw conclusions and then find evidence to fit their conclusions instead of working the other way around. As far as the media is concerned, there is a deep need for introspection. There is a deep need for asking ourselves one more time why it is we do what we do. Is it simply to run successful organizations that have the highest TRPs and then by that ruling manage to get the most advertising rupees? Or do we have a role to play for society? And through that role, is that role based completely and undoubtedly on the truth? Both the media and the police have to use the truth as a touchstone and have to constantly refer to the truth. And it's when they lose touch with the truth that you have a case like this one. Thanks for watching.